Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Sweet House. Today I am sitting down with who should be Nashville's mayor and maybe Tennessee's governor, but also who should be the CEO of Tennessee, period, because she is the CEO of StyleBlueprint. You guys, meet Liza Graves. Liza is handling business at home. She's got 3 kids and a husband, and then you're also handling business with a regional magazine, which is a super awesome accomplishment. That has been in business for years, so it's not going anywhere. And I even saw you post on your social media that this is the past 2 years have been 2 of the most lucrative years that you've had as far as like advertising.
Yeah. So. I mean, so we're digital. So we're a digital publication and we've been around for 15 years. And the last 2 years, I really think that COVID, which almost destroyed us, made us have better business practices and made us really lean into who we are, what we do well, kind of shrink a little bit in order to grow faster. And so the last 2 years have been really, really great. But it's still, you know, I got to tell you that as an entrepreneur, I kind of every day am like, what shoe's going to fall today? And, you know, like.
I feel like that's totally normal. I feel like entrepreneurship, it is, what day is it again? What time is it? Like, you got to be prepared to be the firefighter. You have to be prepared to do CPR. You got to be prepared to just like ride the wave. I mean, it's literally everybody's job, everybody's energy all day long. So
it is. And it's just, and you're also, you know, you're worried about your team and, you know, what's going on with them. And so there's just you want to be a counselor to them and have your business be a conduit to them to reach their dreams.
Yeah.
You want to, you know, make sure that all your advertisers or your clients in another business are, you know,
getting their ROI.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, proving that to them, but also growing and making sure that next year can be just as strong as this year. And it's a lot of balls, but there's something, I mean, you're wired this way too, that we embrace the crazy and there's something that works for us to have a lot going on.
Yeah.
You know?
And it just feels good. I actually listened to a podcast. I can't remember what the name of it was, but your husband actually said that he's not a good employee. And so, I was like, I have never heard anybody say that in that way.
Yeah.
But one of my first questions for you is the fact that you've had such an impressive entrepreneurial journey. Just so you guys know, she ran a lunch cafe in downtown Nashville in the 90s.
Yeah, late 90s to early 2000s. Yep.
Yeah, and then she founded StyleBlueprint, and obviously there are so many journeys along the way, which is why I even started the Sweet House, so people could sit in this chair and just have candid conversations on what that journey looks like, because nobody's journey is linear.
Right.
It goes like this. It's just crazy. And so I just wonder what sparked your passion for entrepreneurship early on, because that's pretty early. Yeah. Especially for your generation, because I feel like in my generation too, like I feel like we all were very much so taught, go to college and get a 9-to-5 route, not necessarily entrepreneurship. Now this new generation, Gen Z, they're like, I'm not going to college. I'm actually just going to hop out here and figure out what I want to do. And so if you're speaking to just all of us, how did you figure out that entrepreneurship was your calling and that you're maybe not a good employee either, like your husband said?
Well, you know, so I was raised in an entrepreneurial family. So my dad had a company, and it was a marketing company, direct mail company. And my mom worked for my dad. And then my mom's mom, so my grandmother, she had a hotel business with my grandfather. And then when my mom was 5 years old, my grandfather died. And so it was like 1953, I think. And so my grandmother in 1953 was, you know, left with this business and she had to take care of it. So she was like a really strong role model in my life, and I'm named after her. And so I just think that, you know, being raised in that kind of conversations all the time where the dinner table is about business and what's going on with that. And then so on my mom's side, then her, like, it goes back like 7 generations. It's like, they're just like the funeral home, the this, the that, like, it's just kind of part of our blood. And I call it a sickness because I think that there's a lot of easier ways to go in life.
You have to be delusional and crazy.
Yes. And, you know, so optimistic. It's like, you know, there's, in some ways, there's the fear that drives us all of, I don't want this to fail. I'm not afraid of failure necessarily, but I don't want it to fail.
So you're going to do what you have to do to get to where you're trying to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. But you have to be always optimistic about where you're going, because if you're not optimistic about where you're going, you're not going to get that extra energy to get there. And so that was modeled to me. So I think that, you know, there wasn't social media at the time, but there was, you know, like actually right in front of me, it was shown what was going on.
Yeah, it was epitomized in your life. And it's interesting because I actually was having this conversation with Alex on the way here in the car, because there was something that I saw on social media that I feel like I would have been great at and did not get chosen for. And so I said, I'm not going to say anything negative about it. I'm not even going to ask myself, like, why didn't I get chosen, or what am I doing wrong? It just wasn't for me
at the time,
right now. And so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I told him, I was like, I'm headed to interview Liza. She's taking time out of her day as the CEO of StyleBlueprint. That is an opportunity that is a data point on my journey that is going to get me to the final equation that I'm trying to get to. Yeah. So I just like, I think with entrepreneurship, you kind of have to think like that. Optimism is the driver of all of it.
Yes. Endlessly optimistic. I mean, I think you have to be. This morning, I was with a group of entrepreneurs with EO Nashville, and it was at a membership breakfast for people who think about that they, you know, would like to be a part of it. You have to have at least $1 million a year business in revenue, and you have to be a co-founder, founder, or what is it, like equity share, like, you know, majority shareholder. But with that, I was talking about how, you know, people think, oh my gosh, like you made it to the top of the mountain and now I get to look around. I was like, I don't know that you ever get to the top of that mountain. I really don't. I don't think that you get there, because in your journey, it's always, okay, well, what's next? What's next? How can I do this? And I think that but you also have to be able to stop and be filled with gratitude about where you are at the same time. So it's the dichotomy of what's next and never feeling satisfied, yet at the same exact moment being filled with gratitude.
Oh, 1,000%. And that's actually the theme of this show. So everybody who sits in this chair, I ask them if they feel like they've made it. So do you feel like you've made it? Because everybody that sits in this chair has had such a robust resume. And in our eyes, as their audience or their fans, we're all like, wow, if I could only do what you've done, like if I could run $1 million business, like I've made it. So do you feel like that in your life, that you've like made it to a pivotal point in your life?
That is a really hard question to answer. Have I made it? Because I'm so happy with where I am today. So in that part, yes. But I think that there is a finality to that statement. Have you made it? That I don't feel that my journey is anywhere close to having ended, or that I've reached my goals. But when I think about how proud I am of my children, and they are older because I was pregnant at 25. So I have a 20-year-old, a almost 23-year-old, and a 25-year-old. And they are such amazing people. And I think about how strong my marriage is. And I'm so grateful to be married to my best friend. And I'm grateful.
How long have you guys been married?
26 years.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I mean, and it's, you know, it's definitely one that we have worked to be strong, you know? And so it's like, when I think, have I made it? I'm like, well, I don't know that I ever had a goal, like as a kid or as a teenager, of what's my life going to look like when I'm 50. Like I didn't have that image, but if I had imagined this, I would have been so happy to have been here and have this be what I've achieved.
Should someone have that image of what their life is going to look like? Because I feel like that was like a common interview question like years ago. I don't know if people are still asking that in interviews. I don't know. But it was always like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, I don't know. Everyone's laying people off. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, well, that's so true. Well, here, you know, it's interesting because I think that if you don't have goals of where you want to go, well, let me backtrack. I think that for a lot of my personal life, I always say I was like a log in a river. And what I mean is I was at that log in the river and I was just like going where the river brought me. But I was opportunistic along the way. But I think that once I realized how to have goals and to take those goals and make small chunks of those and kind of be in the canoe and row myself where I wanted to go. It doesn't mean that you can't look left and right and you can't change the direction or your destination, but it means that you're more intentional, you can get there faster, and you're probably going to realize when you're off course and when you're on course. And for me to be able to be more of a goal setter. So when I think about where I want to be in 5 years, I think 5 years ago where I wanted to be in 5 years. Well, this is not where I wanted to be in 5 years, but I'm so happy with where I am, but you can change.
Do you have any disappointment with the thought? Like when you think back 5 years and you look at where you are, do you have any disappointment? Or are there any things that like you are just not happy with? I was talking to my brother this morning and he said, there's some things that I just like did not see. Like I didn't think this was going to be my situation or whatever. So have you felt anything like that?
I think if I could like have my ideal, I would be living on a farm in the country, and we're not there yet. But you know, at the same time, we've been traveling a lot. And if I was on that farm in the country with all the animals that I want, well, I wouldn't be able to walk away from that, right, and go on the trips that we go on. So I think that you have to close doors in order to do other things. But I'm not ready to close the door on that dream.
Door? Or, okay.
Yeah. The doors. So I think closing it's like it's closed for now, but it's not locked.
Yeah.
You know, like I still,
you can still revisit it.
I want to revisit that, but maybe it's going to manifest differently than what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But I still love the idea of just, you know, having property, seeing all the stars at night, having more animals and having that serenity. Like I love that.
I grew up like that in the country. I'm a country girl.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, I was trying to look at the big blue moon the other night and I was like, well, it's impressive, but like not from my house.
I know, right? And Alex and I live in the city. And so then, but I grew up in the country. So you can't, like, you go to my mom's house and she like lives next to a farm and has a pond in the backyard and you can see all the stars and the moon and just like hear the coyotes and the bullfrogs. I grew up like that. But I think for me, I'm like, since I grew up like that, I need community. I need neighbors. I need to
I think
feel
that
the
I
energy.
would miss that part of it. So, you know, it is one of those things where you're trying to weigh things. I'm like, I have this ideal of what that is. But at the same time, we do enjoy travel. I do enjoy being able to like do my job. And we have an office, but I work from home a lot and bebop anywhere really quickly, be able to see somebody. I like all that. So how do I make those two things merge? I don't know, but I don't have to have the answers. I just need to know that I would like to have this and let's keep working and seeing how it happens.
You have the desire to have it and you will revisit it at different points at different times. And I feel like that is also part of the optimism of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Why can't we have it all, right?
Why can't we have it all? No, I agree. Like, why can't I be in all these places? Why can't I
just need to have a helicopter.
Yeah. I mean, but you know what? It's possible.
It's possible.
I actually was watching Beyonce's documentary and when she was overseas doing her tour, she would literally have a house in one place and take the helicopter back and forth to the stadium and then go home to her family at night. So look, I want what Beyonce has.
That's right. Don't we all?
So I'm like, she's not riding in a black car. She is getting dropped off via helicopter. So I'm like, actually, I'll take what Beyonce's having. I'll take one of those, please.
I mean, a girl can dream, right? And I think that's the thing though about dreams is to have like these really big dreams like that. Like, let's just take that one step further and be like, I want to have a helicopter and do, well, how many, is that really going to happen? No, but maybe, but I think that today some people get caught up in that and like, they feel like they haven't made it because they don't have the helicopter. And I think that's where people are losing their minds. And because the disappointment factor is really big when they don't have that.
It's almost like a toddler. It's like they don't have like Rain asked me for some gummies this morning and I was like, I don't have any gummies in the car.
Yeah.
And so then she's like trying to get out of her seatbelt and like she's like having a fit about this.
Right.
And I'm like, Rain, you're gonna get your gummies when I pick you up at 3:00. Like, calm down. Well, so it's like not right now.
Yeah. But maybe one day. And I think that social media, while it's so great, you are in someone's life in a way that you didn't used to be. And so I think it's a little bit harder for some people to realize, wait, that's their life and I can be happy for them and enjoy this and maybe have a little bit of desire for that, but that doesn't have to take away from my life. And that's a hard thing.
Where you have to also check who you're following, which is a lesson that I am learning as a 34-year-old. Yeah. And I actually had this conversation recently with a few different people. Like, I enjoy following you. I enjoy following Kim, who is the owner of Emerson Grace.
She's amazing.
I was at lunch with Kim yesterday, and Kim literally goes, girl, I'm 57. And she goes, I didn't even have my daughter until I was 36. She goes, how old are you? I was like 34. And I was talking to her about deciding when to have another kid amidst like how to open businesses and how to live and like how to thrive and all these things. So Kim was like, girl, you got time? Like, you never know X, Y, and Z. And she was just like, really, her energy and her optimism for life is just, I was like, Kim, you're like 40. I had no idea. Like, just the way she thinks.
Mean, let's just talk about Kimberly for a second.
Let's talk about Kimberly.
You are absolutely right. I think that if you met her and her enthusiasm, I mean, she didn't even have, did she get Emerson Grace when she was 50? I mean, how old was she when she opened?
She was older.
Like maybe she was late 40s. But I mean, then look at how she just took over social media during COVID with that store and what she's done with it.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. I mean, she is sitting there selling clothing to probably young 20-something years old and people in their 60s.
Everybody,
People identify with her.
Yeah.
You know, they just absolutely, because her energy is so great and her confidence is so great. And they're like, I talk about with Beyonce, I'll have what she's having. I'll have what Kim's having, you know?
Oh, I told her that yesterday. I said, what kind of vampire juice are you on?
Yes.
Because I'll have some of that. But she is just so inspirational in all that she does. Yeah. And yesterday we were having a field day. You guys, if you are watching and you want to know who Kim is, it's Kimberly Lewis on Instagram, and she owns Emerson
The real
Grace.
Kimberly
The
Lewis?
real Kimberly Lewis. Yes, because she will correct me. Yeah. But I was impersonating Kim yesterday. I was like, come on down to Emerson Grace. Don't run. No, she says, don't walk, run. And then she's got this whole spiel.
Yeah.
So it is.
And you're like,
funny.
okay.
Yeah, I'm going. You sold me, sister. So it is funny to like watch her, but she is really stepping into life. Isn't over because her daughter's in college now and she's an empty nester, and life isn't over. And so to watch her through this transition, she actually brought her daughter with her to an influencer event that we were both at. And I said, Kim, I can't wait to do that with Rain. Like, I just can't wait until she's older and I can have that kind of friendship with Rain, and just be able to show her like who I am as a working woman too, and for her to see all the women around me. Yeah. But I feel, back to following people on social media, I follow people whose journeys speak to that. Their journeys speak to them being able to juggle multiple facets of life in a positive way. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that everything is going perfect in their lives. It just means that they're transparent in a way that they're not bearing it all for the internet, but you can assume that they are people and they're going through things, but they're going through them.
They're going through it.
They're thriving through them. Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of just being classy. And what I mean by that is like, you're letting people know, like, listen, this is hard. I'm going through some stuff, but you're also not just airing all your dirty laundry everywhere, you know, and trying to make a soap opera out of it. Yeah. You know, but you're just being real. Because a lot of people do it for the internet versus just being who they are and sharing just a little bit on the internet, but you can infer, but then having enough integrity to sit down and go to coffee with their friend and actually have a real conversation with their friend. Yeah. So it just made me think of, who are you following? Because it's so impactful of how you maintain your optimism. Because if you are following somebody that seems to have it all, as we say, or have unattainable goals, or whether it's body or physical, home, whatever it is, they're driving the X kind of car. I don't even know anything about cars, so don't ask either,
me.
but you know, a car that I don't have.
A car that I don't have. And then you're feeling like, oh man, I don't have that car. I don't have the helicopter or whatever, but you're unsure of what the journey was because that's not conveyed on their social media. I think you got to check yourself. Because then your optimism and your self-confidence just dips low.
Or even if, did they really buy that car?
Yeah.
Is that, are they maxed out on debt? There's all these other things. You don't know their story. And maybe they were able to purchase all this stuff, but again, that's just money. There's so much more to life.
So much more to life, yes. And I always say that you can't get everything from social media. So even when I hear people say that social media is just like enticing people to do all this stuff, I'm like, you cannot taste social media. You can't smell social media.
Yeah.
You can envision things, but it's like you can't tie them back to reality. So I'm like, I feel like real life is so much better than social media because I can't get those gratifications from social media. So I actually enjoy feeling all the things and smelling and just like all of it. You can't get those experiences on social media. So I feel like real life is way better.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's funny because like I don't have any addiction issues, and so it's like I get that people do. But one of the things I am so filled with gratitude for is that I get so much joy from life. Just being sober in life. Yes. I am like get so much joy out of it. But I know that not everyone does, but that's like one thing that I'm really grateful for is like I can go for a hike and just be like, whoa, look at that tree. Oh, look at it. Like, I'm like, all like, I love
can
it.
Too.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage anybody else, like if you haven't found that facet of life, to try to find that facet of life. Yeah. Even the parents, like I dropped Rain off at school this morning. And one of the things I've been doing for the past couple months is if I have time and I don't have to get to meetings right away, I will drop Rain off at school and go walk a couple blocks to this coffee shop. And then I walk around in the area for about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on if I have time. I catch up with my family and friends. I talk on the phone while I'm doing it. But I'm with you. I'm like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Ooh, I get to enjoy this coffee, the aroma of it, the taste of it. Like it makes me slow down and just go with the flow. I actually did it this morning.
Being present in your moment,
Yeah. And I know time is a luxury for some of us. So,
100%.
Yeah. But I did want to talk to you kind of about time because you started this cafe at 24.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you had your first kid at 25.
Yes.
And then between 24 and 25, were you married? You were married then too. So married, started a cafe, had a kid all within a few years.
Yes.
And then what was the time span between that and you going on to start StyleBlueprint?
Okay. So I guess about 10 years from when I opened up the cafe to when I had a business partner and she and I started, StyleBlueprint in 2009. So
there was 10 years in between then. So were you still working at the cafe or did you take time to mom?
Yeah. So opened up the cafe and signed the lease at 24 and then turned 25 soon after, had to like build it out. And I was really lucky that I did not have any college loans. And so when I took this loan out, I thought, well, I have friends that have college loans and I don't, so I can take this loan out. You know, that was kind of like how I looked at it.
Rationale. Yeah.
But I had been working for the state and I didn't have a place where I wanted to go eat. So I was like, well, I'm going to go do this because I was working for the state and I was, managing this place called the Box Seat, which is in Green Hills. It was a sports bar. It's now the Crow's Nest. So I was like working both those jobs. I was just working around the clock. And so I was like, well, I could like open up something in downtown. Like, why not? Right. Like, I mean, it was just like, again, all the optimism, but I knew that I didn't want to take money from anyone. I had some people that had said, you know what, I really want to invest with you. I believe in you. And I was like, I don't want your money because I don't know that I can handle that pressure. So I took a loan from the bank and opened up this place and then opened it up in February of 1998 and then got married in May of 98. And came back from our honeymoon pregnant, from our 2-week honeymoon pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we were going to have kids in 10 years. So then I would bring my daughter, Mary Blake, to the cafe with me every day. Then I built out the upstairs, hired a sitter to come so she could like be up there with my daughter. And we had like one of those little Johnny jump ups that was in the like little utility closet. And then like the cafe was here and it was counter service. And she would hang from there during lunch. And like people would go over and talk to her, but I could see her from where I was. So she just grew up with all these people interacting with her.
And so, she grew up watching her mom like boss this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, it made me sad when she was like 4 years old. I remember I had sold the restaurant at the time, had my second daughter. And then I was talking to my mom and just like during the day on the phone. And she's like, why are you talking to Mimi? And I said, well, because, you know, I miss her and I love her. I hope one day when you're at work that you'll call me. Oh. She was like, mommies don't work. Oh. And I was like, oh, how
mommies
quickly
work 24/7.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, well, here I am. I'm at home. This is a choice I've made. But, you know, a lot of mommies work and I might go back to work. I don't know, but mommies work. Mommies work whether they're at home. Mommies work whether they're at work. But you don't have to think that mommies don't have a job, you know? So that was like, I thought, oh my gosh, for all the work I had done in order to have her be around me and that, you know, they're kids. And she just thought, well, moms don't have a job because I wasn't like going out to an outside job. Yeah. So
do you think society kind of perpetuated that for her at the time, or do you think she solely got that from just you being at home with her when she was 4?
I think that at that moment in time in my friendship group, there were a lot of women that did not work, more so than I think today. It was like definitely a cultural thing that I did not grow up with. I grew up with all the moms working, you know, and, but
you grew up in DC.
I grew up in DC.
And I grew up in Tennessee.
Different
and
thing.
the mamas did not, my mom did not. My mom worked up until she had me. I'm the youngest of 5. And then she said she went back to work after she had me for like 1 month. And she said, I am not doing this. Yeah. So then she stayed at home with me and my other siblings. We're all 2 years apart. So she was pregnant every other year for 10 years. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, but it looked different back then. So it now she comes and she's like, oh, y'all are just too busy for me. And and back to your point, I think more mothers are working, but it's not necessarily because it's the choice. It's because it's like
life's expensive.
Yes. We have been forced to just step into this dynamic of you have to work to live.
Well, and I also think that there are some people who maybe if you stepped back, 30 years, what they're doing for a job today would have been a hobby that they had, but they can monetize it today. And so when there's such a low barrier to entry to be able to monetize it, and I'm not saying that all of them are successful with it, but they can monetize it. Right. But then it becomes, well, I want to grow it into this thing.
There's more opportunities to be a Mary Kay or an Avon rep in today's time.
Yes.
Essentially. Yeah. Or to step into like network marketing was hotter back then. It's like people were looking for anything. It's selling Tupperware, all kinds of stuff.
And it was looking for community too. Yeah. Through that,
And now you are right. There are so many opportunities for you to get out here and make extra money some kind of way. So I was actually reading a story of someone on my Facebook page. She and her, I guess her daughter's maybe college age. They moved to Nashville and she's like, yeah, I'm working at a bar, and she just got a job at a restaurant. And she said, and I'm also doing Uber Eats on the side. And like the two of them, they're living in Nashville, just trying to figure it out. And Nashville is an expensive city.
It's expensive.
Yes.
I mean, I think Nashville's very expensive.
Yes, it is very expensive. But it's so funny because when I go other places with other influencers, I am convinced that they think that we're getting our milk off of a farm. Yeah. And like, and that we're like,
there are some that are we're actually. Like the raw milk is coming.
Yeah, there are. But like, I think that they think that like there's no fancy restaurants here. I'm like, have y'all seen Nashville? Like, it's. I think they think it's like, I don't know, Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton's like adventures back in the day. What was the name of that show? The Simple Life?
The Simple Life. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's what it was.
I think that they assume that Nashville is the simple life. Yeah. And I'm
the
like,
sweet life.
It is the sweet life. But it's so funny to me because I'm like, it is absolutely not the simple life. It's a bustling city.
It is.
So yeah.
Well, I spent 2 months in Annapolis this spring, and just to board our dogs was so much less expensive in Annapolis than here in Nashville. And just going out to restaurants, I was like, why? I mean, Annapolis, like we're right outside of Baltimore. We're in the DC metro area.
Yeah. I tell people that all the time because I lived in DC for a little bit too because I was working on Capitol Hill, interning for Congressman Cohen, and it looks even in New York. I was in New York in February and I went to get my nails done and it was like $40. Yeah, I said I will not leave a nail salon in Nashville without $100 bill. I mean, like the coffee. One of my friends, she posted. She's a realtor and she was in Murfreesboro and she went and got a $3 cup of coffee and she lives in Nashville and she's like, "What am I doing with my life?" I'm like, you and me both. And then my husband's in pharmaceutical sales, so he has to travel to all these places. He's like, I went and got a smoothie in like Antioch or somewhere, and it was like $4 versus $10. $12 in Nashville. So it is just the dynamics look different. I will tell anybody too, the childcare in Nashville. You're talking about boarding a dog. The childcare in the city. Yeah. It's something.
Well, one of our amazing employees, and she just left us a few months ago after 7 years for another company, but she had moved to Kansas City because one of the driving factors was childcare was so expensive. And so she moved back to where she had family that could help them raise because they were about to have their second. And, it's like, or she had her second, but trying to figure all of that out.
Well, then it also, which has also been on my mind, which is why I was talking to Kim about this, is then you have to decide how you're going to do life. If you're bringing another life here, it's like, well, you don't have to. Some people just do it. But for those of us who have a type A personality, like me, I'm like, I planned to have a kid. I planned to have rain. And we're doing this just fine because it was planned. Right. And then like we're planning for another one. And I'm like, how do we do this?
How do we make it work?
Yeah. How do you make it work? And for some people, it does force them out of the workplace. Especially for women. And then too, after the pandemic, now that everyone wants everybody back in the office, it looks different too. Cause it's like the flexibility that we had during the pandemic is much different now. Yeah. So how are you as a CEO of a company able to manage employees who may be facing some of those issues?
So we're 100% virtual. So we went 100% virtual during COVID. So we had just bought this like house that had been renovated into commercial space in May of 2019. We moved in June of 2019. And I had bought my business partner out at the beginning of 2019. So all this was going on. So, I owed her a chunk of money and now we had this building and over in Charlotte Park area, Nations area. And then, fast forward 8 months, everyone's at home. No one really ever came back. But,
did you feel the need to force them to come back?
I did at first, for sure. Like I tried, but I wasn't like, you've got to be here. But I was like, I really want people to come in like twice a week. And then like they wouldn't come in. And I was like, well, okay. Like,
did you do any surveys to figure out why they weren't coming in?
No, I would just talk to them, like we had like 20 people. So it wasn't really big, but at the same time, people were happier, they were happier. And I saw the mamas trying to get their kids to work. Get their kids to school. It's kind of like kid work. And then they would come back and they had to, run. And I've always been super flexible about volunteer work and all of that stuff. And I was like, you know what? All the stuff that would come out like, but if they are working from home, they're more productive. No, wait, that was wrong. If they're going in, they're going to be 20% more productive. I'm like, but they've got to drive in. Traffic is an issue in Nashville. And I always had a problem with the fact that we have employees that live outside of Nashville. So we had like Memphis and Atlanta and Birmingham. So why is it okay for them not to have to come in and trying to manage the two separate expectations? When we went virtual, and we all show up on our daily huddle every morning at 8:20.
And you can still get the work done.
We still get the work done, but I can manage everybody the same. Like everyone shows up and is a little square on Zoom on there, but then we can have Zoom culture. And what I mean by that is like even today, we have our little blueprint buddies that we do every month, and we do like a little activity, and we're all on Zoom and we break up into little breakouts, but we also get together as a company 4 times a year in person for 2 nights. And we have in-person time. And so we set our goals for the next quarter. And so it's all based on our goals for the year. And I'm very goal oriented at this point in my life. And I think because they get to break bread together and they get to sit next to each other 4 times a year, when they're annoyed with each other, they don't get as annoyed because you know
they can
them.
Separate it.
And you don't just close your laptop and you don't have to deal with them anymore. So now we put all of our kind of resources as far as having a really good culture into how to have a good virtual culture, but that we do come together 4 times a year. And then in Nashville, we have a monthly lunch. And so we all go to lunch together for the Nashville team.
Ooh, I love
so that works.
Well, I feel like all CEOs should take notes because that's a cool concept to be able to do the 4 times a year and then the monthly lunches.
It's huge. I will say, because we do a team survey every quarter, and we say it's going to be read out loud. And so it's anonymous, meaning you don't know who said what, but they know it's going to be read out loud. So we say, be respectful, but be honest. And we all stand up and we read all the answers about what went really well, what didn't go well. And we're like, how would you rate the company? What would make your score improve? What could we do better? And we have to read it all out loud so everyone knows that their voice is heard.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're willing to take some risks too.
Yeah.
And so I want to go back to you starting the sandwich shop and taking out the loan.
Okay.
And then also, again, you just you bought this space, like you said, in 2019, and the world went in a whole nother direction in 2020. Yeah. So you're willing to take the financial risk. Was there anybody, I know you grew up with entrepreneurs. I also did. My dad had a construction company, and my mom was a Mary Kay sales director. So I come from people who are making it happen.
Did she have the pink car?
She had the Grand Am.
Oh.
So they were given a red Grand Am then, and she did. So she was working towards the pink car, but you know,
the pink Cadillac.
Yeah, the pink Cadillac. I think they still give the pink Cadillac.
They do. Wow.
Mary Kay is still a thriving business. I still wear Mary Kay. I have a Mary Kay today. So if Mary Kay is watching, I need a brand deal.
I sold Mary Kay in college.
I did at
Vanderbilt. I just was like wanting to do something, and I was like, well, I'll just do this.
Well, and I'm sure it gave you the skills to be able to manage life and also manage your businesses, because you are an independent sales consultant who has to figure out your business goals, and you have to do outreach, and you have to do your own marketing.
And it was fun. I like makeup.
All of it. Yeah. So, and again, it was like a hobby for you that turned into like a business that you could work and make money. Yeah. But I was telling one of my friends the other day, if I had known what I know now, even about real estate, I probably would have bought a house when I was in college at University of Memphis, and I would have just lived in the house versus paying all that money in rent that went up in the air. And so I said, but no one told us that we should have bought a house. No. Nobody even told us that the state of Tennessee has a program for first-time home buyers where they would pay your down payment. We weren't making any money. You have to make like less than a certain amount. And so, but there is an option. I remember when Alex and I bought our first house, they were like, well, you don't meet the threshold. You're way above it. So I'm like, man, I should have bought a house when I was like 20.
I know. Who's advising? Gosh.
So my question to you is, who advised you on getting a business loan for, or did anybody entice you to explore those options, like creating a business? Did you create a business plan? Like, did anybody direct you? I did have a business
plan because I had to have a business plan in order to get the loan. But we're going back like a few years, right? So I'm trying to remember. I remember being very fine with the risk, again, because I had friends who had student loans that were about the same, as me trying to build this out. And I'm sure that my parents advised me. My husband had his own business at the time, and so I'm sure that he was looking over what I was doing. But I don't have like this one moment of this one person came in. Let me tell you this. There were like, the internet was like in its infancy. There was no one advising me on like a pathways or something where women can go and sit down and have someone work with them and really give you expert advice. I had no mentor. I didn't have any of that. And I opened it up, and then of course, ended up, pregnant 5 months later and had a baby. Like
There's
I
so
was
many life
like,
changes.
people didn't know what to do with me, like what box to put me in, because I would try to stay home to have like a play date with, her. And then I'd be like, oh, sorry, I got like 100 box lunches called in. I gotta go. And then I would show up to deliver these box lunches with her, like in my baby Bjorn, with like box lunches on my arms. And I would show up and, be like, here's your catering. And it was like Working Woman magazine. I would look at this corporate person on the front. I'm like, you don't even know what it's like to balance what I'm doing. You know?
A real working woman. Yeah. And a lot of times that is the case. The people at the top have no clue what the worker bees are actually doing to make it happen. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to even ask you the question on how do you manage your employees having the freedom to work remotely? Because everybody's dropping off kids at work, as you said.
I know.
We're all working.
Kids at work.
We got the toddlers working these days.
Well,
so.
I do think that I get that if you're a really large corporation, that it's just easier probably to have one set of rules. I mean, we have 18 people and at the end of the day, they have a lot expected from them. And if they're not putting in the hours, they're not getting their stuff done, right? So maybe they're going to go volunteer at their kid's school for 3 hours, or they're going to go to a doctor's appointment that ends up taking 3 hours. Well, they're putting in that work either on the weekend or at night in order to get it done.
Yes, I was going to say that. It does not matter what time it is done. Because there are nights that I will work after Rain goes to sleep.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what time it's getting done. If it got done at 12 a.m., as long as it's getting done. And I do feel like that is the kind of culture that corporations should adopt.
I do too. I think that where it gets sticky is where when you're trying to have communication with people. So my thing is, hey, if you want to work at 10 o'clock at night, great, but don't expect me to have to reply to you at 10 o'clock at night. So we try to keep all of our communication between 8 and 5, and then whatever you're doing on your own after that, great. But unless it's an emergency, don't get in touch with people. But do your own thing. There's so much of it that is solitary work. But I think that's the sticking point, is the collaborative part, And so, and it's a balance. And I think we're in this weird place in time where we're all trying to make it work and we have to revisit it. But for us, we're not going back. But what we did have to give up, and we did, was we can't hire right out of college anymore. I don't think it's fair to that person who's right out of college to be in a virtual environment where they can't be mentored by just being in the same room with someone and overhearing what's going on and just having that
camaraderie that you get in having to get up and go to work every day.
And just the learning of being immersed in it. You don't have that. So I think that we can't hire that person anymore.
That is an interesting perspective, because I'm wondering, what does the person out of college do? Because I just remember getting out of college and thinking to myself, I did not think that it was going to be this hard to find a job. I actually spoke at Vanderbilt earlier this year to their master's of marketing students and their MBA students. And a lot of them graduated, and few of them are having a tough time finding jobs.
It's hard right now in marketing, finding a job.
For sure.
Today it is.
Yeah. One of them, she's making the most funny TikToks. And she's like, I've got this master's of marketing degree from Vanderbilt, and I cannot find a job. What shall I do with this degree?
I know.
And I'm like,
and that wasn't a cheap degree.
It was not a cheap degree. It was not a cheap degree financially or sweat equity wise. So it is interesting, because it's like, how do we give these people a shot? But I also feel like there's so much that could be taught in college that is not taught. And so that's why you can't hire a college grad, because they don't have the foundations or the principles that they need to compete.
Everyone who works for me, I want them to work for me forever. But I'm also realistic. So what I want for them is them to always be growing in their knowledge, them to be, being able to expand their wings. And when they are ready to leave, that they have a skill set that is going to get them to where they want to go. And I don't feel personally, or at least the way we are set up, that someone right out of school can get those things in their toolbox that they need for that next job, working a virtual job. That's really what it comes down to. But I think that once they've kind of experienced that and they're like, I would like to have a virtual job, but I have this foundation of real work experience, then I can hire them.
That makes
hard.
sense. It is hard. And it's a hard decision to make as a CEO. And it's also commends you for having the conversation out loud and letting people know that, because I think a lot of times we think that these opportunities are open-ended for everybody, and they're not.
Right.
And it's like, but you have to do what you have to do for your business model.
And my team is happy now with the way that it's working, you know.
Yeah, for your business model.
For my business model. And I do have, you know, so it's, you know, it's interesting because, again, when, like, what are you going to be, what do you look like in 5 years? What do you look like in 10 years? Like, how would we even know 5 years ago what this looks like?
Yeah.
How would we even know about how AI is so disruptive to my business? You know, how Google search has been so disruptive to my business.
And how social media has been
so disruptive. There, like, there's so many things. I mean, Facebook used to send us a ton of traffic. It doesn't anymore. You know, so all that kind of stuff. So when we look forward 5 years and talking about, you know, speaking about being in college or what you're learning even without college, I really want to hire people who know how to think. So I need people who have a certain skill set, but it really comes down to your skill set now may not be what we need in 5 years,
1000%.
but you need to be able to grow and think of how that is going to materialize.
You got to be multifaceted and 1000%, which is exactly why I decided to start volunteering my time and doing speeches at colleges geared towards marketing. So the aspects of Belmont students and also Vanderbilt students on all of the facets of digital marketing, because I've worked in all of them. I've done tech marketing. I've done social media marketing. I have been a radio host. I have worked for a media company. I've worked at every industry at this point. I've worked with construction. I've worked with Peloton. I've worked with media. I have worked at all of them. And you have to be able to be multifaceted across the board. So I actually
100%.
created this one slide that has all the different pieces of marketing. And I walk them through each of these pieces of marketing, everything down to this is what the social media team does. This is what the content team does. This is what the tech marketing team does. This is what the pricing and merchandising marketing team does, and so on and so on. Because the problem is they will get thrust into an environment where they're expected to do 100 people's jobs in these infrastructures, and they won't know how to respond. So then they shut down, and then they are looked at as if they are the problem, and they're not the problem. The problem is we are not equipping our people because we're teaching them textbook knowledge versus what they're actually going to encounter when they are at these companies. They don't even have the life skills to function outside of these companies. Like I said, teach them real estate, teach them about taxes, teach them about things that they're going to need to compete in today's society, period. So I get it. But like I said, I commend you for just even having the conversation so that they understand it's not you as a person. It's not, your education wasn't a waste. Your dedication to your craft isn't a waste. It's just.
And your lovely comeback in a few years, you know, but it's really what it comes down to. And this is kind of how I do everything in life. What's best for that person before what's best for me. Like, oh, well, I could pay that person out of college less money, right? Than someone who's been out for 4 years. Like, oh, and I don't have a lot of margin in my business. Like, that would make more sense. Let me just have this happen for, it's like, but that's not what's best for them.
No.
And then I'm going to also put all of our time into
trying to train.
That's not going to work, and they're going to be miserable. So
and
why
time
do that?
is currency.
Period. Oh my gosh, that took me a long time to figure out.
So that is just such an interesting conversation. I know we could talk all night about that. Liza and I, speaking of in 2020, I actually partnered with StyleBlueprint to do a diversity education workshop. And at the time, we all know a lot was happening in 2020, and it was all displayed as far as equal rights and police brutality and all of these issues that the Black community has faced. They were all on constant replay for all of us in 2020. And you chose as a CEO to have this diversity workshop. And I remember she called me and she said, I have this idea that I want to do. And so I just want to hear your take on how you feel, like what prompted you to do it, for one. And then how do you feel like it has impacted your business moving forward? Because so many businesses are rolling back. They're scaling back with DEI and even talking about it. They're scaling back with any sort of programs to help their communities be diverse.
Well, if I go back to 2020, so just to start with, I was so underwater. I mean, we are a publication that relies on local marketing dollars that was expanding into more event and travel. Well, all the event went away. All the travel went away. And most of our local businesses were like, we're shut down. We're going to stay open. So it was like the spigot turned off, you know, and it was terrifying. I mean, really terrifying. My husband had just quit his job to come work for StyleBlueprint. I had a huge loan because I had just bought half the business from my business partner, and had this building that we had just moved into 8 months prior. So I was just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive this? But again, relentless optimism. We work very much like a print publication. I'm going to circle back to this, but I just want to put like my mindset of where it was such a bright and beautiful moment for me and why I needed it. So we work our editorial calendar much like a print magazine. So it's like, we know in 3 months, like, okay, this is what we're working on. Now it might change some, but we are always working ahead. And we pay freelancers to write articles, and we have our own team. We had all these articles written that we had to basically trash because who wants to read about, where to go on spring break or something like it wasn't happening, during this time. And some of the interviews we had just they were tone deaf because of course they had happened prior to all of this going on. So we had all of that. I was absorbing all of the fear of my customers who were scared about, am I going to lose my business? My daughter was on her junior year abroad and she had to come back. And so I had 3 kids at home, all, at school, virtual. My daughter didn't have her prom. She almost didn't have her graduation because it was her senior year. I mean, so it was like all this stuff was happening. And my dad had just died 6 months prior. So it was just so much. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait, there's this terrible thing that happened with George Floyd. And it was like all these protests, and I got it. I mean, I totally understood. But then there was this kind of emboldened thing of call people out for where they're wrong. And I had 3 Black women reach out to me and say, people are calling people out. I want you to know that I recognize that for your faces, you have always gone above and beyond and put Black women in your faces. And Faces is a series that she does at Style Blueprint, just so you guys know. Yeah. And it's like interviewing women every Monday. But these 3 women, one from Memphis, one from Nashville, and I think the other was maybe from Atlanta, just like emailed me. And they were like, hey, and people don't just email to say nice things. People typically email to say mean things. And they were so kind about recognizing that, even though we from the beginning have not been, we're about Black women. We're about women, and women is who we're about. And it's not just white women. And so they were so kind in this moment that I was so scared. And then I had this white woman reach out to me who just was so mean and ugly. She was terrible, like what she said. And she was the marketing director at a retirement community. And she was like, you only speak to white women of privilege, and I'm calling you out, and I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I hate Style Blueprint and you personally. And she listed all the stuff. And then I went and looked up, she was the marketing director for this big thing. I went and looked it up. Every photo that she had on her website of who they wanted to be in their retirement community was white. Every single photo. And I went deep in their website, except for one Black man who was the server at the restaurant there. And I was like, seriously, you are calling me out for this? And I was like, I just want to be a place where people can have conversations, because there's obviously so much going on here. I want to be a place where what I've always wanted to do, which is what brings people together and where people can maybe have an uncomfortable conversation, but be respectful and start to realize like, I didn't realize that. And I knew from being at that WeWork dinner where I first met you, I was like, you know what? Jasmine is amazing, because I remember you had brought up at that dinner what it was like to be a Black woman in Nashville and navigating corporate life. And I was like, you know what? I think that we can, instead of being polarizing, because I know I have a lot of different, because we're not political at all, I have a lot of different opinions that read Style Blueprint, that maybe we can provide this lovely place. That was like my hope, that people can hear you and hear your story and start to realize like, because I will say that for me, I had read this book, what is it, Just Mercy? And by Brian Stevenson.
The one that was made into the movie?
Yes. Yeah. And when I read that book, it totally changed me, because I grew up in the DC area and I was like really colorblind and very proud about being colorblind. But what I realized in that book was just how when a man is like happy to have my opinion in the room, but doesn't recognize all the struggles that I've had to go through as a woman in order to be in the room with them, that I was doing the exact same thing maybe to you, and realizing, oh, well, we're the same, and not giving you
the space to breathe and to actually share the experience.
Yeah, that you've had a whole other experience than I've had. And that me just treating everyone the same and being like, oh, well,
it doesn't acknowledge it.
It doesn't acknowledge it. And I had become aware of that maybe like 3 or 4 years prior to that, you know? And so I was like, you know what? Well, I had this revelation, and there's probably a lot of people out there also who are in that same kind of blinders that I had on. Like, I treat everyone the same. What's wrong? It's like, you have to acknowledge though, what everyone's journey, and that other people were not born with the same set of, just that path in front of them, and that they had to fight harder. So you were so gracious to then say yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm grateful that you gave me the opportunity, and that you have such a robust publication that is reaching a huge region, especially the southeastern region, which is where a lot of ground is bloodshed and historically tainted. And so I feel like, you doing that for your audience also said a lot about how you want to run your business, and the people that you want to reach, and the positivity and the optimism that you want to pour into all of them. Yeah. So I appreciate you being one of the companies that dedicated some time to actually understanding. And Cheekwood is another company that I work with. I've been working with them for like 7 years, and they pour into everybody. Yeah, I mean, they're amazing. They are amazing. They just had the Black Arts Bash last weekend, but they're constantly doing all sorts of cultural events and workshops and all kinds of stuff, so that we all have the opportunity to be present in other people's stories, maybe not understand their whole footing, but have an idea of what that's like. And so it brings everybody together. And so I wish that my hope is that companies will, I know a lot of them have started rolling back. I hope that they start stepping into it more, because it's kind of sad to see. And I've had the experience even with influencer stuff. It's like all these companies committed to it. And then I go to an event and I am the only Black woman there. I'm like, well, you committed to this. This is very interesting. Or because back to how people perceive Nashville, they only choose white women for some of the brands that come here, only choose white women for things that they might have going on, because they don't even see this city as a city that's diverse. And it is a diverse city.
It is a diverse city.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's why publications like yours and In Focus and Nashville Lifestyles and all of the other ones, Modern Luxury that's come into Nashville, I feel like have a due diligence to share what the city actually looks like, so people see that it is colorful and spicy and beautiful. Yeah. And we're all communicative across each other, because I feel like the historical context of it is Nashville is a white city that's all about country music, and people can kind of miss that. So
they can. And I will say something that drives me a little batty, I guess, is I think that it's really easy to be like, well, in February, we'll have Black women. And then it's like, there's 11 more months out of the year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Let's get in the practice of like doing it every month. So then it won't be so weird.
Right.
When you do it just in February or, and I was actually reading.
It feels pandering to just do it in February.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. In Focus magazine, was it In Focus? Maybe it wasn't In Focus. Nashville Scene. They did a story on Rhythm and Spice. It's a restaurant in North Nashville, and so they pretty much are going to have to close their doors because I
saw this on your stories. It was the Jamaican restaurant, right?
And here's how impactful the work that you all are doing with magazines is, because, and the work that I'm doing as an influencer is, because I read this story in this magazine. And then I was like, man, I used to go to Rhythm and Spice every day when I worked at Meharry. It's right across the street. I'd walk over there and get some lunch and go back to my office. So to see this business say that they have not been able to thrive in an area that is being gentrified, I called Alex, and Alex was like, let's pick up Rain and go eat dinner there, because we want to be able to help them keep their doors open, even if it's a $50 meal that's going to help them keep their doors open. But it started with us being educated on the fact that this was even happening via a publication. And then I, as an influencer, then shared it on my Instagram stories, because I'm like, hey, Nashville, like this place is literally 5 minutes from downtown Nashville. And they have some good food. And that's the cool part about Nashville. You can go get your Mexican food over here. You can go have some Mediterranean dinner over here. You can go to this spot and get some Jamaican food here. There are so many options here. You can go have some Indian curry chicken if you want to. Like, we've got options in this city.
We do. And we didn't used to have as many, and we do have really good options.
And so I think, like I said, the influencers and the media have a huge job in Nashville to make sure that we are portraying what the city really looks like. Because I wouldn't necessarily say what people think we are is actually who we are in Nashville. So.
Well, and I think that, Nashville's so funny with the It City and all this kind of stuff. And you think, oh, well, now the secret's out. But there's just a lot of people that don't realize how dynamic of a city Nashville is.
Yeah. So I think you're doing great work with everything. And I love that. Let's see. What shall I ask you next? Because I had so many questions for her, you guys, but I think we are literally at the end of our interview. But I always have so many questions. I research my guests to no end. And
I know your questions. I was like, whoa, she has like really researched this.
Yes. And I know Liza, but I still like to research like what people have said about you. And then I just let the conversations flow from there. So this is very authentic, real information that I told you guys that you were going to be getting from the beginning. I am going to go to this question. You've been recognized as a woman of influence and most admired CEO. How do these accolades influence your leadership style, and just what do they mean to you personally?
It's always nice to be recognized, but it's like, do you know the Enneagram? So I'm a 7, but I'm not a 3. And what that means, like in Enneagram language, is 3s really like strive for the awards, and 7s are, I'm 7 wing 8. They really see like that optimism, wake up every day like, oh, today's going to be a great day. And I am like that when I'm healthy, but while I'm not always looking for the awards, I don't like fill out all the stuff for them. I don't do all of that. I really, when it happens, you're like, oh, well, that was so nice. I do feel though that I got this most admired CEO last year from the Nashville Business Journal. And that was so nice, but I was just in a really bad headspace. And, I'm up for it again. I don't know if I'll get it again, but now I'm like, if I get that again, I'm going to be more thankful. I'm going to reach out to everyone else who got it and be like, I so enjoyed being in your company, all that stuff. I do feel like sometimes life's busy and I don't properly say thank you or recognize in the moment a gift that's been given to me, and I realize it later.
Yeah. I love that. But something that you just said brought me back to our conversation that we were having at dinner a couple weeks ago, and I asked Liza if she'd be willing to come on the podcast, and she goes, "Yeah, because I'm in a good headspace right now." Had you asked me like I think you said a couple months ago, you said I just was not in the space to like just like
share
to share. Yes, and so can we talk about that? Because I think as entrepreneurs, creatives, whoever that exists in this industry where you're funneling things yourself, it's easy to feel like sometimes I just cannot show up. Because even in the influencer space, I feel like that sometimes. And I'll take like 2 or 3 days off of Instagram stories because I'm like, I just don't have the capacity to show up and give without it coming off as like, hey guys. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to be like, I'm naturally happy go lucky, but I don't want it to seem acted out or just framed. I just need to just be. So what does that look like for you, and how did you transition back into the space where you were willing to come on the Sweet House?
Well, I think that it was just, it was a really long, like 8 years. I mean, it was long, just the space I'm in is a hard space to be in. And then just going from just some stuff that happened within my business to then again, like, going from having 2 co-founders to 1, having that debt that then hit with COVID. My dad died. We almost I felt like we were going to lose the business, but I was still relentlessly optimistic, and we're just clawing our way back. And then we get to profitability again 2 years later. And then we slowly like get back. And I'm like, oh, it keeps growing. Like things are going really well. But it took me 2 years of getting back to profitability and to having a team that was really happy and really good feedback from them and really great feedback from our clients, and seeing the growth and seeing opportunity to start to believe it. I just think that I really, for a couple of years, it was just, while I was optimistic, I just had a lot of, like, I didn't even want to admit that things were going well because I was so scared that I was going to jinx it just by saying it. And I just wanted to be quiet. And so I had a lot of people reach out to me over the past few years about being interviewed. And I was like, I just can't because I don't want to like say I'm doing well because I think tomorrow could end, you know? And I was just on that, tightrope of just having to be really focused and having to be optimistic, but at the same time wanting to hold it close to my chest of, like where we were going, because I just felt very vulnerable. And I just couldn't like put it out there.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And I always say that you don't owe the internet or the world everything.
Yeah.
Some things you can keep for yourself. And I feel like that little secret that's in you, or those feelings that are in you, are you being vulnerable with yourself enough to recognize that you don't have it to give right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I do have a question.
Okay.
What would you do? What would you have done if it all went up in flames and like...
It's so funny because that wasn't even an option. Like I never thought about, if this happens, what am I going to do? Like it wasn't, Jasmine, it wasn't on the table for it not to work. Like I was like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, like I was like, what am I going to do here? Like it had to work, but we definitely made plans of like, well, what does this look like with only 5 people working for StyleBlueprint? And I didn't want to let anyone on my team go, and I let no one go, but PPP saved us. Like that whole, like, plan from the government that saved us because we were dramatically affected from COVID, and we were able to keep everybody employed. And what we did do though, as people left, we did not replace, so we got more efficient, but we let it kind of naturally happen. And I didn't want to let people go because I didn't want people to be fearful of, oh my gosh, I'm next, and just have a lot of people go. So, we just kind of worked with what we had. But I don't I'm sure, I always say like, if you want someone in a foxhole with you, you want me, because I'm going to figure out a way out. And because I get really single focused and I'm like, we're going to get out of this.
I think it's a superpower because I have special senses, and I notice that Rain does too. It's very crazy, but you can put me in a dark room, and if you ask me where north, south, east, and west is, I can point you in the right. I can do it. It's very weird.
Is amazing.
Or us just sitting here.
Yeah.
That's north. Yeah. That's south. Like, I just know, like, no matter where I am, I can feel it. I always feel energies. I feel equilibrium. And it's funny because we took Rain to this basketball game at Bridgestone. She's 2. So we take her, and she'd already been to like 4 basketball games. But for whatever reason, this basketball game, she was like, it's too loud, mommy. So we went out in the hallway, and mind you, Bridgestone's an arena. So it's like a circular arena. And we had walked all the way, all around the arena to our seats. And so we go out in the hallway. I was like, okay, I'm gonna let her calm down for a minute. She goes, home, mommy, home, that way. She starts saying that way, and
she was right.
How did you know? Like, how did you feel that? And how did you know that we were needing to go that way? Yeah. So then Alex and I tried to go back into the stadium with her. She was like, no, that way. So she was pretty adamant about it. Yeah. So we started walking that way. So I said, Alex, isn't that strange? And he was like, I mean, you're like that. So then we get outside the stadium, and I said, which way, Rain? She said, that way, to the Music City parking garage. And I'm like, this woman is 2. Like, how does she have the intuition to be able to direct herself in that way? But I also have always been that way about all things in my life. Is I'm like, all right, we're going that way. Yeah. Because that's the way.
Right. Yeah. And you can feel it, and you know it. Yeah.
And whatever we encounter, whether it's rattlesnakes and bears or whatever, we're going that way. Because I know it's just a felt thing. So it's a sensory thing. So it just feels right. But I love that you also kind of have that intuition about your business, because I feel like CEOs have to have that.
Oh, I mean, it's actually, I think my fear right now is that I do such a good job during a really stressful, lot of chaos out there, and like, this is the way out, is what do you do when times are good? And that can sometimes, it's a different skill set. And I'm like, am I an okay leader when times are good? Because let me tell you, we've been through a whole lot, so I'm like, yeah, let's see.
Let's see what happens. Yeah. Well, you guys, I hope you gathered some awesome information from Liza, and just her willingness to share behind the scenes of what it's like to be a CEO at a major digital magazine. You guys do have some print occasionally, or did you used to do some print? I feel like I saw a print magazine from StyleBlueprint before.
We have been, we've had some materials that maybe you saw that we've printed out, but we are 100% digital. We've done some direct mail, sometimes just about different events or something that we've done, but we're 100% digital. So we have a really large subscriber audience, like daily subscribers, over 200,000. So we've always leaned into email, and then of course social media, but social media is much more,
it's getting fickle.
It's never been our bread and butter. It's been our like little, sprinkles on top of the cupcake, but the publication itself. Yes. Yeah. But we just have always done a really good job growing our email audience and having that direct communication.
Okay. One last question. Would you say it's important for anybody, influencers, business owners, or whoever, to have their business intact, or their marketing and social media intact?
I think that it's really hard to shine a light on a business that's not working. So you have to have your business intact in order to do the marketing, but there is a little bit of fake it till you make it, and as the business owner, you got to realize like what you're doing. But, if all of a sudden your marketing does so well that it brings you a lot of business, but then you like make everyone mad because you can't fulfill anything, or you do a poor job, well, the social media and the reviews that are going to come from that aren't good. We've all seen it here in town, right? Like, I mean, a place opens up and there's all the PR around it, and then you're like, it stinks.
Yeah.
Like if it was like really good and they didn't have all the marketing and they got all the feedback from their customers and then they did something like, long term, that's the better way to go.
Yeah. So you guys, that is my advice as well. I would have to say to anybody, make sure your business is in order, because that is the product that you're essentially trying to sell. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I am a huge believer in business ethics. So while you might fake it till you make it, the truth always wins.
Yeah.
And truth is also what happens over time. I'm like, fake it till you make it is an instant gratification.
Yeah.
Truth and winning is a time-based situation.
100%.
Yeah. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Liza, and go check out Style Blueprint magazine on social media. Also subscribe to her email list because they are constantly communicating with their subscribers, as she said, and you need to be of the 300,000 subscribers that they're going to get to pretty soon. So thank you for coming on the Sweet House.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. Yay.